All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another Webflow workshop. I am your host, Nelson. Thank you for joining me for episode 142. This is a special episode. At the end of every quarter, our CEO, Vlad Magdalin, stops on by to talk directly to the community. And I don't have him on the camera right now, but first, just want to tell you for to the community who hasn't been to one of these live streams yet, these streams happen every other Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/webflow. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit that notification bell. Usually during these streams, we do some rebuilds or we show you some awesome, cool thing to do inside of Webflow, and also get some special guests from the community, from the staff of Webflow, just so you can hear from all variety types of designers and developers in the whole Webflow world. All right, so at the end of every quarter, again, Vlad gets on the stream to talk to you, and we talk about things that we've done in the past quarter, and also things that we may be doing for the future. And he'll also be taking your questions live. So we have some of our community moderators in the live chat room right now who is dropping the link to ask your questions. So it's a Google form. Just post your question there and we'll have a list and I'll go through them as fast as I can with Vlad. And yeah, so let's gonna go to my screen real quick and show you some stuff that some notable stuff that we've done for this quarter. Let's talk about, well, obviously we'll start here in January. So a little trick that I know our brand designers Ryan and JP, what they do is use CSS position sticky, and it's pretty neat because you can make things that are stuck to the page while other things scroll, and then it can unstick to the page. And we used to do that through custom code by using a HTML embed or adding custom code to the head tag. But you no longer have to do that. There's a new position sticky inside the style panel. And speaking of style panel, we also launched the beta version of it, the new style panel that you can go ahead and play around with. And also the Webflow e-commerce that is now live since February 19. Now, I know some of you might have been saying, oh, I've been playing with it since last year. Well, yeah, that's when we launched the beta of this, but now it's open to everyone. So a lot of cool things have been happening for this quarter. But now let's get Vlad on the stream. There we go. Hey, Vlad.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Doing well, doing well. And yourself?
I'm doing all right. It's a beautiful morning in San Francisco, which is a big difference from yesterday, which is rainy and gloomy. So
Oh,
today's a good change of pace for sure.
that's good. That's good. Well, sorry to keep you out from the nice sunshine and in the studio, but the community wants to know a lot about what's happening with Webflow. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy days to talk with us.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, yeah. So, for this past quarter, I think the biggest thing would be e-commerce. Wouldn't you say?
That would be fair to say. Yep, it was
Yeah,
probably our biggest feature that we worked on over the last year. I mean, it was huge.
yeah, and it's still getting bigger and bigger. And we also just launched the ability to add Apple Pay and Google Pay
Yep,
into it.
yep.
So
And we're working on PayPal support. We're working on
nice.
like non-shippable goods. We'll be working on digital goods. Like there's just a lot coming for e-commerce. So it's an exciting part of our product roadmap. So
Nice, nice. And
talk about that.
yeah, so when the e-commerce feature went live, was that like a big weight off of your shoulder, or was that something like, okay, now things are just going to get really, really big because there's just so much that the platform can do?
I mean, it definitely is a new area of responsibility for us because it's the first time that you're moving money on Webflow's platform, and
Yeah.
people are buying stuff, and people's livelihoods are at stake, and there's like transactions happening and people are waiting. So it's definitely amped up how much we're responsible for, but it also kind of amped up the value that Webflow is adding. Like you can do so much more as a designer now without having to learn how to code. So it's definitely, the responsibility and the things that kind of freak you out and the things you have to worry about and get right is balanced with how much power we're providing and how empowering it is for designers and many other people. So it kind of the positives way outweigh the things you have to worry about. So it kind of encourages you to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so amazing the flexibility now you can do with e-commerce. I know that for myself, I can't code a custom e-commerce template on another platform. It would just be too much for me to try to handle as being more of a designer than a coder. And I think one of the first ones that
I'm a coder. Like I spent 15 years coding, and I still would probably have to spend days, if not weeks, with Shopify's documentation or like WooCommerce documentation to figure out how to do something custom like what you can do with Webflow visually. So it's not even a designer or coder non-coder thing. Like this stuff is hard. It's really hard.
And then plugins left and right just to make something kind of work.
For sure. Sure.
Yeah. Oh man. But besides that, is there anything else in particular that you were excited about from this quarter, or something that's coming out really soon that you're excited about?
We've been working on a bunch of like grid improvements for collection lists.
Oh yes.
So that's coming. There's autoflow mode, which is amazing, where you don't have to like place your items. It sort of automatically figures out how to place items in a grid. So that's super exciting. There's still a lot of things we have to figure out there for like drag and drop rules, etc. But that's really exciting. What else? I mean, there's a ton of things that we haven't talked about yet that are coming down the pipeline. Maybe I should keep not talking about them because just to not overpromise. But definitely a lot of improvements coming for Grid. And a lot of collaboration improvements. We're getting close to like finalizing some stuff with our rich text editor that'll allow us to add a ton more features to it.
Nice.
And yeah, and a ton of stuff coming to e-commerce too. That's one of our largest teams now. And I think I saw a few questions around multiple images, like multi-image field is coming to the CMS, which I'm super excited about because
yes.
For like not having to create a field for every image in your collection or whatever. And that sort of sets the foundation for things like CMS driven light boxes and photo galleries and things like that. So that's one I'm excited about as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think
also there's the whole like secret plan to take over the world, but I think we decided to talk about that next quarter.
Yeah, next quarter. Yeah, well, so stay tuned, everyone.
This is off the record, right? This whole thing is off the record?
Totally.
Practice
this is, the internet. Nothing gets away, nothing goes beyond this screen or, This is not on the internet.
I gotta say this. Like, I'm looking at the chat. We got Sweden and the UK and Tampa, Wales, New York City, Uganda. Holy moly, this is amazing.
Speaking of taking over the world.
I know. This is really cool.
Yeah, it's a great global community, and it's amazing. And speaking of community, I'm just gonna throw this out there. Hey, meetups. The global meetup community is growing. Search for one that's near your area, and if you haven't joined one or don't see one in your area, go start one.
Yeah.
But
or if you're in Australia, I think they're called meet downs over there, right? Because it's
yes, we got our first one. That was a good one.
Yeah. Did you see the? I think there was something about Elon Musk trying to launch rockets into space, and they're like, why don't we just put them in Australia and let them fall into space? That'd be Vietnam, India, Ghana, what? Arkansas, Pittsburgh, Denmark,
Netherlands, Mars. Whoa.
We got the moon represented here. Kenya, St.
Awesome.
George, so cool. Ireland, Bulgaria. Wow.
San Diego.
Riley, don't lie about Narnia. Come on. You were there yesterday, but I know you're back home today.
Alaska. Awesome. Yes, yes. All right. Are you ready for the questions from the community?
No.
Okay, so we'll just chit chat. No, the
Yeah.
community here is excited and they want to know what's going on. This is, you know what? I'll save that one for last. Let's go. Okay, we're gonna go from the bottom to top. Okay, so this one's from Twitter, from Bailey. He's asking, "Can you ask Dad Joke Vlad? I guess that's your name now. About the future of the assets manager. I know a lot of designers that would love to see simple changes to this, like multiple selection, deletion, overriding, etc."
Good question. So we're not making any immediate changes now, aside from the multiple image field. But we did form a team around the designer experience as a whole. And the asset manager, I know, is one of like the top things that keeps coming up. So we don't have any immediate changes happening there. But it's definitely something I know a lot of our product designers are just like itching to improve, because we haven't touched the asset manager in quite a while. And there's so many more improvements there, like organizing by folders, being able to filter better, being able to link assets to, we actually have kind of an internal Skunkworks project to link assets to Figma assets. So that way, when you change an SVG or an icon, it automatically reflects in your asset manager, which would be really cool. We're still playing around with that. That's just like blew my mind when I saw that demo. So it just hasn't kind of risen to being one of the most important things, you know, as we kind of tackle more use cases, especially like e-commerce and multiple image fields and grid, etc. But I know it's, you know, it hasn't gotten a lot of love in quite a while. So we hear you. I just can't promise when we'll get to the asset manager, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Yep, it's not a if, it's a win.
Yes.
But yeah. For Kane Kane from Facebook, this person asking, how far away are CMS sliders and tabs? Clients really need these so they can add and remove slides via the editor mode. Good question.
Yeah, totally hear you. So that has been a technical challenge for us, where the way that we implemented our original sliders and tabs, it wasn't quite as future-proof as we wanted. So we started a team around getting that modernized first, and then we have a separate team called the Dynamo team that is all about linking those to CMS data. So the first thing that they're working on right now is like multi-image repeater. So you can sort of like build a rudimentary photo gallery based on the image set field, but it's on sort of like the medium-term roadmap to start making all of our what we call blocks, or all the things that you see in the ad tab, the elements. The things that can be dynamically bound, they should be dynamically bound. So sliders, tabs, even navbar, link items, you know, to link them to available pages, etc. I just don't have any timelines there. It's just something that we're working towards. It's just so hard to say when all those building blocks are going to be in place to actually release it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you know, the bigger the community gets, the more the community wants from the platform, and we totally understand. And the bigger our team has to be. And like, I think recently we just split up into all these different areas so we can have more focus on each thing. And I think and I think this is just the beginning, and I feel like things are gonna speed up once we have that foundation completely set.
Yeah, what Nelson is referring to is kind of an internal organization we did to form. Before, we just used to work on features, but then people who worked on features would jump to the next features when those are done. So you sort of like the older stuff got for lack of a better word, got neglected because we were just working on the latest and greatest shiny stuff. But now we're organized into product areas where each product area sort of like owns their space. So there's like CMS, designer experience, grid, working on some secret stuff that I don't mention, but like CMS, the dashboard, etc. First time use experience, etc. And a huge part of that is now we are focusing teams on like very specific missions. So we're now building out a new accessibility team to make sure that Webflow's the sites that you publish and Webflow itself becomes more and more accessible. So that kind of structure, I think, is only possible because of the amount of engineers we have now, and how many product areas Webflow has. It's just sort of like we had no choice but to really do that. But yeah, you're right. Like that lets us focus on making, not just like do something better and ship something new and like keep adding new stuff, but across the board make Webflow better, even in areas where we didn't spend time before. So for example, we would launch Interactions 2.0 and then sort of move on to the next thing. Now we have an interactions team. So they're working on like Lottie integration with After Effects. They're working on like these really like simplifying the entire Interactions 2.0 engine so that it can have sort of like the reusability and simplicity of Interactions 1.0, which wasn't as powerful, but it was also simpler to use. So it just means that you can actually focus more and more on that specific product area, and then everything in Webflow across the board gets better, slowly but surely.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Let's see here. From John from our Facebook group. And also, if you haven't joined our Facebook group, there's one. We have a Facebook page, but also there's a Facebook group within it. Join that one. These are where the questions are coming from, so you can ask your questions there too. John says, when will clients be able to edit CMS on a mobile device? And will grid be fully implemented into collection lists? So one thing that I've done for myself to make my CMS, my collections, I can add stuff to the collections, is I just did a zap where I submit a form from my phone, just have a simple form, and it goes to Zapier, and then it sends it into the collection and makes it live. So I mean, that's my little workaround. But yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a workaround. We are not exactly sure when we're going to have like a mobile editing for the editor. But there is now a team around the editor. So we just have to like balance that against everything else. The collection list support for grid is coming very soon. So, soon, TM or whatever. It's already behind a flag in production, but we're testing a bunch of things to make sure that it's ready for prime time. But that is the number one priority of our designer experience team. So that is on the horizon, let's just say.
Nice. That's gonna be fun. Let's go to Michael. Okay. How are we doing with multi-language support?
To be honest, multi-language support is turning out to be a much bigger technical hurdle than we anticipated. We sort of wanted to kind of approach it incrementally at first, but then we realized that it has implications for CMS and static pages, and you really have to build it in at an infrastructure level, like a foundational level. So right now, we don't have any estimates on when that's going to be done. We just want to do it the right way. We don't want to do it in the kind of do it as fast as possible, just provide translations, because there are many different options right now. They're like JavaScript based that can do that. But for us to do it correctly so that it can like render on the server and deliver very quickly across the entire world, like it has to be supported by our CMS natively. It has to be supported by every type of node that you can translate. You have to like localize images, because images can have text on them. You have to localize alt text. You have to localize the ability. You have to like create workflows for how people provide translations, whether it's via CSV or on the canvas, etc. So that project is complicated. Let's just say, if it was
Sounds
just
like
like,
it.
uh, yeah, if the even though the multi part is shorter than the language part in the phrase itself, the multi part makes it like an order of magnitude harder. So that's something that we hope to have more details later. But like when we're actually going to start alpha testing, you know, we'll get more comfortable around talking about it.
Okay.
But right now there are no concrete, even like approximate timelines.
Hmm. All right. All right. Understood. It sounds
Oh,
very
the other thing I forgot to mention
Huh?
for e-commerce is that we're also working on coupon support, I believe. So that's coming after PayPal.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
because I know a lot of people have been asking about that.
Cool. Cool. All right. All right. From Josh Lopez, he says, my wife told me I had to stop acting like a flamingo, so I had to put my foot down. All right, rate the joke.
Speaking of which, um, you're at a party with a bunch of animals. Uh, who is the most flirty out of those animals?
I don't know.
The flamingo. As my daughter came up with that one. Get it? Mingo,
Yeah,
flamingo.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Move
You're
on.
you're teaching her well. You're teaching her well.
She's teaching me at this point. She,
Nice.
she, uh, she told me the other day, she asked me, what happens when you bury an egg?
It gets rotten.
You get an eggplant. Anyway, let's move on to
Alright,
the real
moving
question.
on. Darren from Facebook. Another common question. Yeah, this makes sense. Desktop app for offline editing. Yeah.
Um, Big TBD. So
Yeah.
Webflow is really hard to do offline. Just imagine something simple like a background video
Yeah.
or YouTube embed or web fonts that rely on Google Fonts. Like all of a sudden, your entire design breaks, and then you're making design decisions based on things that are like collapsing because they're not provided. So there's a lot that we need to figure out before making like a completely offline mode. It's more likely that we'll have a desktop app that sort of wraps Webflow, but still needs an internet connection,
Mm-hmm.
just for the flexibility and all that. But I think the true offline mode is going to take a while. And
Yeah.
that's honestly something that right now, just given sort of like the limited engineering resources we have, um, we have to kind of balance that against things that are being requested much more often.
Mm. Yeah. Understandable. Understandable. All right. All right. From the
Mariah, stop
there's
it.
what? Really,
She said, I'm
Vlad?
really glad the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
10 out of 10. That one's 10 out of
Yeah.
10. Very original. I like it. Gabriel in the live chat room's asking, any plans for WebGL?
So WebGL, it depends on what you mean by that. We do plan on, like, there's so many things you can do with WebGL where it essentially becomes like a 3D animation platform, almost like
Ooh.
Unity or Maya or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't plan on Webflow becoming that, but with our future plugin marketplace, it's definitely, I think there's going to be a lot of WebGL enabled components or blocks. So imagine like a 3D Earth that you can like plug into locations from the CMS, and that renders kind of like markers that you can spin around or whatever. The actual
Ooh.
block is powered by WebGL,
Oh.
which renders canvas, but that doesn't mean the entire site renders with WebGL. So I think that's sorry, going to be on the horizon, but no immediate plans to like make that a central priority, I guess.
Okay. All right. Cool. Alex, let's see here. Alex is asking from the live chat room, during CSV imports, it would be awesome to have Webflow import inline images in the post body itself into the CMS instead of having them hosted externally. I think that already
I think
happens.
we just shipped something around that,
Yeah.
where if it's an external URL, we'll actually import it as an asset. So maybe shoot a support question to support@webflow.com
Yeah. All right.
to see
Okay.
if that specific use case we might already cover.
Josh Lopez, no more no more dad jokes, please. I see like four other ones in the spreadsheet. Um
By the way, do you know what differentiates a dad joke from a regular joke?
no.
With a dad joke, the punchline is apparent. Or, according to my daughter, uh, if a joke is not funny, it's a dad joke. That's
That was a joke that slowly seeped into my ear and it was tickling me going up and I was like, "Oh, I get it." That was a good one. All right. From Gavin, oh, okay. This is just more of a general community question. What is the best prototyping tool to use with Webflow, XD, or Figma? I think that's a personal question. For
yeah, it's a very personal question. I
Yeah.
prefer not to answer it
Yeah.
publicly.
All right, Genevieve. For IX2, will we be able to change the initial states for different breakpoints in the future?
Already possible. We just shipped it a couple weeks ago.
Yes. Yes. Yay. Yeah, that was
Don't you
that was
love
a
that?
excuse me?
Don't you love that when you're like, oh, I want this feature to exist. Oh, it already exists.
Yeah.
Yay.
And that's why after I asked it, I was like, ah.
Yeah.
All right. Um Tristan, any plans for designing for apps inside of Webflow?
Never had that idea. Just kidding. Uh, not no. Next.
Okay. Someone already asked about coupons. Okay. Let's see here. Dom, I have a system I am developing on Webflow that will have hundreds of sites. Whoa. Are there any plans for accounts with many hosted sites?
So we have team accounts now. I think they can have up to 300 hosted sites. So depends on how high you go, but I'm sure we can like bump that as well. There shouldn't be a limit on that. You know, as long as you're making more websites, there shouldn't be. We'll work with you to make sure that we can make it possible. And I think we're working on a partnership program that'll provide more discounts the higher you go in terms of hosting plans.
Nice. Nice. Riley is asking, Webflow conference anytime soon.
We're talking about it.
Yep. I saw Brian tweet about it, and I'm excited about it. It would be amazing. I mean, can you imagine your first Webflow keynote in front of the community? You wouldn't be scared.
I'll let you do it.
No, this is you. You had the idea. This is
I'll be like a phone, a browser, or wait, a phone,
a digital music
device,
player or
and an
something.
internet communicator, and then I'll just like rotate all of those, and then all of a sudden like something will explode that says like dynamic sliders.
Has nothing to do with it.
Right, exactly.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it would be cool. John is asking, how's the plugin API coming along? I have many ideas for different scripts I'd like to add to Webflow.
Yeah, a huge refactor for us that we're still going through. I'm super excited about it, but it's gonna take time. So that's another thing that we really want to get right. So no news on that yet, but I think it's going to be like pretty foundational for Webflow.
Mm-hmm. All right. Dylan in the live chat is asking, are there any plans to allow for staging sites to be masked with a custom domain? For example, client.lovably.com rather than client.webflow.io. Yeah.
Yes, you can actually already do that today. You just have to set that up as a custom domain or a custom CNAME. But you have to go register that domain or like control that domain with your registrar. It's just like not directly built in. I think sometimes people, when they want that, they want like a team plan that has, let's say I ran an agency called whatever, Vlad's webdesignagency.com. Then as a default, I would publish to, instead of webflow.io, like Vlad's web design agency. That has a bunch of like security implications initially, just because like login for the editor would have to work on that domain, not webflow.io, which is a little harder to engineer. And yeah, we just don't know like if we're going to have something like that, but I think you can already do custom domain based sort of setup. The only caveat there is that you have to like set up a hosting plan to get that going, and then you probably have to do some rejiggering once you already know that you want to go live.
Yeah. So the workflow that I've always seen people do is like they have like client's name as a CNAME from the root domain, and then it would be like client's name dot lovably.com, and then they would use that as a site plan on that one project. And then once it's ready to go live, they just remove that domain name from Webflow and put the client's real domain name. So,
right. The main caveat there is that you have to have a hosting plan set up, which I think a lot of people are looking for, like free staging hosting, and that's something we can consider. It sort of depends on, because in our opinion, like a lot of times when you're already doing staging with a client like that, even at that point you can set up like client billing or something like that, where it's already, you're like halfway through a project or something like that, you're already doing staging work, and it's fine to expect the client to start like paying earlier, or you pick up that cost for a while and then bill that to the client or something like that. So we'll see how that plays out over time.
Thank you, Dylan, for the question. Victoria is asking, what kind of project management system do you use in the company? All of them?
We have this culture of creating paper airplanes, however you want to make them, and you write down like the user stories that you want implemented, and you sort of like throw it at whatever engineer you think will be the best for it.
What if it goes to the wrong engineer?
Oh, it always goes to the wrong engineer, because like paper airplanes, they kind of have a flight path problem. And no, I'm just kidding. So we use kind of a combination of our own thing. We use GitHub. Some teams use something called Clubhouse, but we essentially use, each team decides how to structure their sprints as long as they meet some key criteria for how we like broadly communicate with each other around progress and what's being worked on, what the priorities are, what the prioritized backlog looks like. But that's still something we're trying to figure out, like year to year. It changes all the time with like the amount of people working on it, what the teams are working on, whether it's infrastructure or product related or growth related. It's just so many different avenues here. I think the company that nails that, almost like Zoom nailed video, is going to make a lot of money for managing projects or product development. So we don't have a perfect answer for that yet.
All right. Let's see here. Yeah, that's the same question, Tyler. You asked when will we be able to build full functioning web apps inside of Webflow? This would utterly disrupt the way SaaS companies are created to date. And yeah, you've spoken about that before.
Hear you. Yeah. It's also a very hard problem. And that's something that we want to approach incrementally, to make sure that, for example, it wouldn't make sense for us to build out full-featured web apps before we have multi-language, or before we have user accounts, or before we have a plugin ecosystem or whatever. So there's a sequence to these things to not put the proverbial cart before the horse. That's like a horse cart, not like a shopping cart, by the way.
I got it.
So we're hoping that our product direction goes in that general direction, but we don't know when. So right now, a lot of people are already building. Like I saw an example of Airbnb that was built on Webflow. It was Zapier. Kind of uses our API to go back to the Webflow CMS, and just feels like there's some sort of user authentication.
Wasn't that MakerPad?
Yeah.
MakerPad, yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah,
it's a when, not if. But the when is a big question mark.
Yeah. Cool, yeah.
Not soon.
Obviously, yes. From Raymar, are there any plans, and if so, what is the ETA, to build in more interactive elements for the sites from a functionality perspective, as opposed to just visually like is available now? Things like comments, ability to like posts, save posts, user-generated content, etc. Even the simple ability to add a CMS entry form to the front end of a site where users can fill it in directly would be huge. This would open up the door for building robust community-based websites, and I'm sure there is a significant demand of that as the social networks continue to pervert user privacy. I'd like to take a little stab on this. So, comments, you can, when we launched the Zapier integration, you can now do actual comments where it just publishes live to that collection. And liking posts and saving posts. I know that you can do Zapier as well. There's like just some workarounds you may have to do, but as
the challenge there is it's not like true user generated content, right? And it's not designed all in one place. So again, this is very similar to the previous question around like building full applications. And we're attacking that pretty deliberate, like sort of systematically, one step at a time. So for example, customer accounts are coming to e-commerce at some point, and that serves as a foundation of user accounts in general for like all kinds of websites, even if you're not using commerce. It's the same shared concerns like login, keeping state, keeping a user session, logging out, being able to design what all those things look like, being able to show login state. And then over time, we'll add more like application level type of concerns, but it's like a very long road to get there.
Yeah, I hear you. Cool. From Tom, he's asking, do you write all of your own material?
Yes, and you can tell because it's all mostly bad.
Please come out with a dad joke book, please.
I mean, they're all derivative, so I don't know what the calculus would be around that kind of book, but that was a calculus joke, by the way, because of the derivative part.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll. That would not be good for the world, let's just say.
You think?
Well, let's put a pin in it. So.
Yeah. You need to make a book. So, how about like that would be a prize, a Vlad joke book for like a random drawing at the Webflow conference.
Yeah, if anybody wants to volunteer to be my ghostwriter, my DMs are open.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. From Corey, does Vlad see Webflow growing as a professional tool for enterprise level design / development workflows? For example, could we eventually see collaboration and feedback capabilities similar to InVision, Figma, etc., while expanding on Webflow's existing ability to design with real code so that one day static/fake mockups will be a thing of the past?
Ding, ding, ding. Yes. So Webflow is already used by a ton of enterprises. Like Dell is using Webflow to prototype a bunch of stuff. People are using Webflow to build entire like design systems, and then kind of like writing some scripts to convert them to React or Vue or Angular, etc.
Oh,
Like more and more of this stuff happening, and we want to make that like over time more native, so that you don't have to do these sort of hacks and move closer. Like our entire vision is to empower people to create software without writing code, which means there's no translation layer, which means that you sort of like design everything in one place and then it can go live directly to the medium that you're creating for, which means entire design systems should be able to be created by a designer or someone who is like working directly on the design system versus having like one idea of a design system like Sketch or Figma or whatever, and then like go translate it back and forth and then sort of try to figure out where the source of truth is. That's we're going to be, we will be adding more collaboration features to our team plans, etc. So you can like go in and comment on specific like nodes across different breakpoints.
that'd be so cool.
So I know that's on the horizon. It's probably not going to be as like generally applicable as InVision, because you can just like throw in an image and like comment on anything. Webflow is more specific to building the actual thing in production. And there it would be very helpful to be able to like anchor comments to specific parts of the page or specific components. That way, if you're like adding stuff on the top of the page, you know, everything stays just like in Google Docs, comments stay anchored to where you provided that feedback or insight or whatever. But yes, like Webflow is already being used at enterprise scale, just not with the in some cases not the types of tools that people might expect with other tools that are being sold as enterprise products, you know, like $1 million a pop or something like that. But it's pretty much inevitable that since it's already being used in much larger teams, we're going to move closer and closer to that being more mainstream or more supported natively out of the box.
Cool. Yeah, that's gonna be cool. You saying leaving comments kind of like Google Docs. That's pretty cool, because like there's a lot of times customers would or clients would just like take a screenshot and then circle something, or
Yeah.
like, hey, this is broken, you know, and please fix it. You know, it's like, oh, okay. And hopefully people aren't. I remember a past job where someone would print out the page and then hand it off to me, and I'm like, that's old school, but it's okay. People do what they want to do. Brian is asking, are there any plans to have a repeater field for adding multiple rows of content? Repeater field?
So we kind of already have that with our collection list, but that's added to the CMS, or that's sort of linked to the CMS. I know what you're talking about. Those sort of like the Adobe XD or Figma type of like grid or something that just repeats. That's an interesting idea. I think like I haven't heard much about that in just like a purely static context, just like as a design aid. But you kind of will get that with grid autoflow, where the more items you add inside of the grid, the more they'll just like repeat according to the rules that you set on the parent grid container. And the main advantage of that over kind of standard repeater tools in design tools is that they are actually not agnostic of the content that's inside of them. So if some items are longer or higher, they sort of follow the rules of web layout and the box model. So some things will actually like stretch the grid or will drop down to their own row or whatever, as long as it follows the rules of the layout engine. So we'll see where like how far grid autoflow takes us. Maybe that'll get you what you want, but we already have something like that now with CMS collection items, which essentially repeat all the things that meet the filter. of what you're like the data that you're binding to. And you can essentially put anything into each one of those items, and it automatically repeats that design over and over. And if you haven't played around with that, like the Webflow CMS, the visual CMS is like the most mind-blowing thing. Like once you realize the power of, holy moly, I can like add these items, these real items into this database, like list of collection items, and then I bind directly to it, and as the data changes, the UI automatically reflects. It's like, boom. I'm still blown away. Like every time I demo the thing, just how powerful it is, because you're literally doing the work of a front end developer to hook up a template, a back end developer to provide like a SQL or GraphQL query or whatever, and then like the authentication piece, the API key thing, and it's all that detail just goes out the window because you're working directly on the thing that you're designing, and it just works. You don't have to worry about all those lower level details. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Riley is asking, oh, this is one that comes up a lot now. In a recent Webflow education video, there was a CSS preview modal in the designer. Any comments on when or if that will be implemented? It seemed super FRESH.
It's coming soon. So it's actually going to be a button on the left sidebar that you can enable. And I think it's awesome because it gives you like this immediate connection to, wow, the changes I'm making here are actually writing code. And it can be used as the learning tool for people just starting in web design that want to learn web development and really want to become familiar with CSS. So yes, that's coming very soon. Like we already have it working as not even a prototype. It's like working live behind a flag. We just have to figure out some details because like we want to add the ability to like move that preview anywhere so it doesn't get kind of block your design. But that's a pretty big thing for people who want to see the effects of like what visual manipulation has on the code.
Yeah. See what happens behind
one
the
big
scenes.
caveat there is that you're not able to edit the code. So it's not like a code editor. It's more like a code preview that shows what effects your changes are having on the code. It's also great for demoing because you can see like, hey, I'm dragging this thing, but it's changing this radial gradient. This pretty hard to understand specification or syntax that developers who've been doing this for 20 years, or in the radial gradient case, like close to a decade, and still can't remember the syntax. And here you go, like we're generating all this stuff automatically for you. So
nice. Let's see here. Bodhi, thanks Vlad and Nelson for doing this. We love you and your team. We love you too. Do you guys have any plans for a dedicated app for managing e-commerce, or even even a functioning web app for mobile e-commerce editing?
It's on the table. We have to see what demand is like. As e-commerce spins up and we get more store owners, more like admin users, it's inevitable. Like we'll have to have something like that at some point.
All right. Alfonso, really good question right here. Do you believe builders like Webflow will make coding obsolete?
No. So, and I'll tell you why. I think our job is to make sure that sort of the curve of what's possible with coding, which is constantly increasing. You can do more and more with coding, especially with all the libraries that we have now with machine learning, AI, augmented reality, et cetera. Like code is sort of the frontier. And our job is to make the curve of like what's possible with visual development to sort of close that gap. So the things that you could do with code several years ago, you could do in a visual abstraction that's a lot easier to understand for many more people, 10 times, if not 100 times, if not 1,000 times more people. So that curve is always catching up. But we will always need developers. We will always need to like push that frontier to show what's possible. So I'll give you an example. Like when Flash was dying and the web was sort of like people weren't sure whether native apps or web apps were going to be the next big thing. And you could only do things like take a picture and add it, upload it to, social network or whatever. You can only do those things, or like show location. You can only do those things with like iOS or an Android device. Then all these features sort of like get validated in the market, and then they get pulled into the web, and then they get standardized. So things like progressive web apps, things like caching and responsive images, and HTTP2, and just so many things that are developer only type of things, like GraphQL, like writing React by hand, linking to dynamic data in a database or whatever. The more these develop into like known use cases, then we can find these patterns that are like, hey, these are applicable to millions of websites, if not tens of millions of applications. And we can like sort of create patterns out of them and create visual tools around them. And then that becomes sort of like the de facto way of doing that thing. And then developers are still sort of exploring the frontier and seeing the things that haven't been moved into an abstraction. They are still doing with code. And when the abstraction doesn't have enough detail to do something visually, you'll still need developers to go plug in that functionality. Like, let's say you need to interact with like Zapier's API or something like that. You still need a developer to like hook that up to like the Webflow API and then provide that in sort of like a black box that many or thousands, if not millions, of other designers can use, or non-developers could use to kind of use that functionality. And that follows the same pattern that just computing has followed in general. Like we used to need to know how to write like Fortran or COBOL and have a team of programmers to do simple stuff like financial projections. And now business people across the world are just pulling up Excel or spreadsheets and doing these things completely, declaratively in a spreadsheet. And there are many, many examples of this where we have like visual workflows and workflow engines and things that typically used to be done by a team of developers are just like much more streamlined and solve the same problem, and in many cases do so safely, more safely and faster and cheaper, et cetera, than having a team of developers do it. And the good news is it's like fundamentally, like for many developers, that kind of translational work is not that fun anyway. So you want to be working on the bleeding edge of like writing algorithms or working on augmented reality or building like a new game engine or creating tools that haven't been created before as a developer. You don't necessarily want to be like spending your entire life taking a Photoshop file and translating it to HTML and CSS. Like if we can create tools to make that automated or empower designers to skip that entire step, then as a developer, developers can move on to more interesting work. But I don't think it'll ever kind of completely supplant like text-based development, because the opportunity is so huge around like the tools that we can still create, and a lot of them just require the control and precision and complexity and like performance benefits and yada 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 of writing the code directly. So it's sort of like will be just like you needed a movie studio before to make a movie. Then people sort of like found commonalities there, and we got something like a YouTube where anybody can, not have to worry about how does a video get distributed. You just have to worry about creating great content and like building an audience. Like a lot of those things are hidden behind the scenes, and then you just focus on what's most important. So I think more and more things that are done with code today will move into like a no code or low code type of workflow, but that doesn't mean that coders will be any less needed. In fact, I think that's going to be the field that's in increasingly higher demand. Where just 2 years ago, I think I saw some data where there was like a predicted 500,000 engineer kind of shortfall of how many engineers and software developers companies want to hire and how many are available or graduating from schools. And now just a few years later, it's like 1 million developer shortage. So that's definitely not going to remove the need to write code. It's just like more stuff is going to move into no code environments like Webflow.
Nice. All right. Beautifully said. All right. Frankie is asking, can you talk a bit more about the status of the plugin marketplace?
So I think we talked about that a little earlier. TBD. We're working on it. It's hard. It's a hard problem.
Nope.
I wish it was something we could just, copy paste and plug into Webflow, but you can't. It just needs to
Yeah.
be supported from the ground up.
Okay, from Alan. Love dad's jokes. No, that's Vlad, not dad. So, any plans for? I made him laugh. Any plans for real-time filtering and sorting content, especially when e-commerce is live? It would be awesome to have it reachable in Designer instead of using a mix-it-up plugin. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of our first plugins when we have plugins available, so that it is native, like you just see it in the ad tab. But right now, there are no immediate plans to make that native. But it is since it's more of a with e-commerce, it becomes more prominent. But traditionally, it's been more uh, capability that's in less demand, I guess. But absolutely, I see that being native in Webflow at some point. I just don't know when.
All right, all right. And I think Kyle spoke
Maybe
about that.
we'll mix it up and make it available sooner. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't hear that joke.
I said maybe we'll mix it up and have it available sooner.
Okay. Let's see here. Duncan is asking, when are you going to put WordPress out of business? I.e., how much is Webflow investing in marketing? Huh. I don't
Um,
think we.
yeah, it's gonna be a while, and I don't think WordPress is gonna go out of business. That's not
No.
our plan. We want to provide a much easier alternative for sure, but it's gonna be a while until we're fully um, feature capable as to what WordPress can do, especially on the plugin side, and the huge marketplace that exists around WordPress. Um, we are spending more and more of our time and effort on marketing, but we also realize that Webflow as a product is our main kind of growth channel. Like the more capable we make Webflow, the more people will use it and talk about it and promote it at their companies. Um, so a lot of our growth is product led, but we are considering so many more things. Like doing our conference and doing more advertisement, more events, and things like that, where it makes sense, since we are a customer funded company where all of our revenue comes from not deep investor pockets or whatever, but from amazing community members like all of you. So we have to be prudent around where we invest that money. The kind of wink, wink, nod, nod there is that if we get more customers, we can do stuff faster. So spread the word. It definitely helps in building our team in a very thoughtful and non-risky way, because I know a lot of especially in the early years, people are really worried about Webflow going out of business or disappearing or like being gobbled up by Adobe or whatever. Now you all know that's not happening. We're very stable and here for the long term. But again, it really, really helps when you spread the word and get more people
Yeah.
excited about Webflow, because that means it doesn't mean that we're buying mansions or whatever. It literally means we take every dollar and hire more people to build more things faster.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just funny that you mentioned people being nervous about putting their business on Webflow because I think probably 2 years ago when we were doing these live Q&As,
mhm.
that would be a common question, and then I'm surprised it hasn't been being posted on the forums or on the live Q&As lately. I guess we've
I've
we've
been
got that
going in and
trust.
deleting all of them. I'm just kidding.
Trust us.
I mean, that happens with every platform,
Yeah.
like WordPress when it first came out, it was really, a lot of people didn't want to put their entire business on it. Same thing with Shopify. They were a developer tool at first, and then it was sort of like kind of sketchy for a while. Now nobody questions whether to base their business on Shopify. It's going to be around forever. And I think Webflow is hitting that, especially in the last couple of years, has hit that inflection point where
Yeah.
we've proven that we know what we're doing. We've proven that we have a stable business. We've proven that there's a rapidly growing community that's going to be there to support you. And that is, I think, is only going to increase. So it makes the case even stronger
Yeah.
for trusting Webflow with your business.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Oh, it's already 11:04. So, we can stay for another 30, right? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Let
Cool.
me hold on.
Cool.
Let me check my calendar. Uh, I have a meeting with my ghostwriters in a second.
Working on that book.
Yeah, exactly. No, I have time. So
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Noah's asking any thoughts on being able to upload or attach our own custom code files instead of having to place custom code just in the custom code embed elements.
I don't have thoughts on it now. The problem, as always, is that it's harder for us to execute that stuff on the webflow.com domain without introducing
Yeah.
security issues. I know we're doing some work right now to sort of like isolate each designer instance so that we can get closer to being able to do that, which means that we would probably add the ability to add kind of like custom code into the asset manager or something like that and actually execute it on the canvas. But that's a big, big fat uneducated guess right now.
Yeah.
I just know that that's something that we're working towards to move closer to the vision of Webflow being like a true what you see is what you get environment, not like a sometimes it's what you're gonna get, and sometimes you have to like go publish the page and see if that's what I really intended. So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Cool. Donald is asking Webflow merch store ETA.
I know that there are a lot of discussions in preparation for that internally. I just don't know if there are like launch dates or it's just a lot to coordinate on the operation side. We have to figure out what products to have there, how we're going to produce them, like make sure quality is good. We can't have everything like funneled through our office because that becomes really expensive, both in terms of operational cost and
Yeah.
storage costs and shipping costs and all that stuff. So um, TBD. We hope it's
Yeah.
going to be soon because I would love to myself buy more Webflow merch.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And I think Charlie Marie did an interview with Ryan recently,
yeah,
and they were talking about this a little bit. And Ryan is super excited for a merch store too because he's like, yeah, I have ideas to create some crazy shirts for Webflow, and it would be cool to just wear some different type of swag of Webflow. And yeah, so we the internal community, I mean the staff at Webflow, we want it too. So
yeah.
yeah, we're all waiting. It's
We're
gonna
running out
happen.
too. We're running out of swag too. So
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Uh, oh, we've already discussed this, Marius. Could you guys build a component in Webflow so I can just add Lottie animations? Yeah.
yeah. So the
Yeah.
thing we're working on right now, it would automatically be you would pull in a Lottie file and automatically go on our CDN. So then it would just be an asset, essentially in the asset manager that you link to. And then that JSON file is kind of a thing that you can update, but you don't have to embed it as a. So if you have the same animation twice, it's not like you have to embed inline a bunch of JSON twice, like
Yeah.
you would with an inline SVG. So that's definitely something that's a goal of that feature.
Yep. And they're already working on. Let's see here. I think we've already talked about that. We
By
just
the
talked
way,
about
guess
that.
how excited I am about that upcoming feature?
How excited!
A lottie.
Okay, I knew that one was coming, so I'm gonna give that a 6 out of 10.
Yeah. No, that's like a 3.2 out of 24.
Wow, point two. Okay. All right. Let's see here. I think. Wow, did we get all the ones, the major ones? I'm just passing up all the dad jokes that are filling up the spreadsheet too.
Oh, got it.
Unless you want, unless
By
you
the
want
way,
me to
there
read one
are
more.
student discounts. We have a 50% discount for students, even if you don't have edu email, as long as you can provide proof of being a student now. So like a transcript or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Even if it's like a
yeah. Webflow.com/students. Yeah. And Brian is asking, yeah, we've already touched on this a little bit, but it's user auth/memberships would allow me to use Webflow for 99% use case. And you spoke about this, about the e-commerce where you can have like users save the,
yeah.
have their own user login and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's it's their entire company is built around this. So it's a complex space, like membership sites, kind of subscription services, things where you can log in and sort of like manage your orders, etc. It's too soon to say when and how we're going to solve those problems, or if.
Hmm. All right. Um, yeah, I guess the rest of the question is all about just dates and everything, and I think we got them all. Uh, Victoria's asking, when will the baseline grid appear? I'm not sure what that is. I want to make great sites with impeccable vertical rhythm.
Yeah, so
Baseline
baseline.
grid?
Yeah, we have a bunch of stuff coming for just in general design systems in Webflow. So like typographical systems, which include not just showing a grid vertically, but having sort of a grid that you can follow to make sure that all your topography and all your content kind of follows a vertical rhythm. Um,
Hmm.
so I know there's a ton of stuff coming that's sort of like ill-defined right now around kind of like how we have swatches right now as like inputs. They're almost like variables that you can, once
Yeah.
you define a global swatch, you can reuse it in many different areas, whether it's gradients or colors or backgrounds or whatever. Then if you change in one place, it changes everywhere. Similarly, we want to move closer to being able to declare entire design systems like typographic systems in Webflow where, you have like typographic scale, and then that sort of changes all of your H1s through H6, like font size and line height definitions. And for that, we will need to add sort of like vertical rhythm tools to make sure that you can see like where your baselines fall. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know when. I just know there's a lot of conversations about it, um, and a lot of ideas going back and forth.
Okay. All right. We already talked about multi-language. Yeah, I think that's about it. Marius is asking a Webflow cookie component. I guess like the cookie notification, but people have been building that on their own
Yeah,
already.
yeah. There's so many different variations of that, and so many different compliance requirements depending on different companies that it's very hard for us to take on that compliance burden and say like here's one that's super powerful that addresses all needs, right? So
Yeah.
um, for example, Webflow, we use a tool called, a lot of companies will just like show that cookie warning and just do accept or deny or whatever, but by that time all of the tracking scripts have already landed on the page, so it's just like there for show. Whereas Webflow uses something, we use this analytics provider called Segment, and then we have a script that basically doesn't add anything to the page until you hit approve or whatever. So that's a totally custom implementation that we had to do from scratch. But in order to, and it's very dependent on what we use for our analytics provider, and different companies use different things, and there's like CookieBot and OneTrust and so many different providers of this stuff that I think it's going to be a while, probably until our plugin marketplace, and where we'll enable vendors like CookieBot and OneTrust and whatever that provide
Hmm.
these as a third party to build them directly into Webflow and kind of specify them visually and style them visually, etc. But until then, I just don't know if it makes sense for us to just sort of like provide a one-stop shop for that kind of thing. And that's where you'll need to rely on custom code or kind of getting one of those providers where you just have to drop it into the footer
Yeah.
with a little include or whatever.
Yep. Yep. Makes sense. And I
But
think
we can also
that's
add
like,
branded cookies to our merch store. It'd be like Webflow if that's
I'd buy them. I'd buy them. You
yeah.
know. Yeah. So David, don't worry. I got your question right now. He's asking about shipping rates. So, will you make it possible to change shipping rates according to postal code? This is important for certain industries, such as restaurants or florists, because they
Mhm.
don't use shipping services and they deliver the goods themselves. The further the client is, the more expensive the delivery is. Neither Shopify, Squarespace, or Wix will let you do this. I
Mhm.
think you can.
I don't think you can right now. You have to provide shipping options, and the customer has to choose. So you have to provide
Oh,
them.
yeah.
But I do know it's on our roadmap. I know there's a lot of providers
Hmm.
like Shippo, et cetera, that make that possible. Um, I think that's a very valid thing to put up on our wishlist.webflow.com, and kind of articulate all of those use cases. We'd love to understand more about them, and I'm pretty sure our e-commerce team is already looking at that. I just don't know where it's prioritized. So the more
Hmm.
conversation that happens about it, the more clear it is that there's demand for these things, the faster we'll end up working on them.
Yep. Yeah. Let's see here. Dylan is asking about the future of the Webflow experts page. We joined experts just last week. Thanks, Nelson. You're welcome. But notice that all the links to the page were removed from the Webflow homepage. And I think this is because of Webflow Partners program or something that we're working on.
Yeah, we're experimenting around there. Unfortunately, we've had quite a few experts that just didn't respond to customers or just had a very kind of suboptimal relationship, which reflects on Webflow, honestly, because people see that program as like an endorsed list of people who provide really awesome Webflow services. Even though we get no revenue from that directory, it's just like our way of promoting folks in the community. So we're experimenting a lot there to figure out different incentives to make sure that the quality is really high. Because over time, we're not going to be able to promote agencies and freelancers that don't give our customers a good experience. We'd rather have fewer people in the directory that aren't able to take on more work, rather than a plethora of people that have leave others with like a really bad experience. So there's just a lot there that we're trying to figure out. Over time, we'd like to increase trust in general, where like
Yeah.
coming to Webflow as somebody who's looking for a service provider, what you're going to get, especially with some of these agencies that are charging, $10,000 plus, sometimes closer to $100,000 for projects. We want to make sure that there's an avenue for people who aren't Webflow experts to figure out how to get started with Webflow, get a running start, get trained, and get like the initial build out done in a very predictable way. That's you know isn't going to take a ton of back and forth with 10 different people, etc. So a lot of experiments happening there with like a new partners program, the experts directory, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm, Lots to figure out. I think I think we're good. How about being able to change the max container size without having to create a custom div? I mean, a container is a div. So,
Yeah, but containers have like all these kind of built-in properties that we based off of Bootstrap. That's a good
mm,
question. We're still. I know we've talked about this many different times around like a larger breakpoint. We finally formed a style system team that kind of helped create a lot of the new style panel. So now we have more cycles. Once we do some kind of behind the scenes cleanup, we now have a team that's going to look at that more deliberately, rather than just like one or two engineers trying to figure out if it's possible and then kind of moving on to something else when it seems really hard. So we know that there's a bunch of problems with the current grid system, especially once you start including like Fluxbox or CSS Grid, because of like the way that clear fixing was done in the old containers, where it has like some invisible items, like the before and after pseudo elements that get in the way, that you kind of have to be like, you have to sort of have a PhD to figure out why layouts don't work correctly. It confuses me all the time. So there's a lot of work we need to do there. It's just right now, like the most flexible path is for you to, like, we actually created a video in Webflow University around how to kind of build your own like super custom containers. I know that takes more work, but like you will find a lot more flexibility that way. And then pretty soon we hope to like sort of standardize that into a new block that is like kind of like container 2.0 that doesn't have some of the limitations of the old grid system. Because remember, that container was meant for the 12 column grid that was all based on like this old float based layouts. That was the kind of like way that layout was done 6 years ago when we first started, or Flexbox and CSS Grid. So a lot of times you're much better off using Flexbox or Grid, even though those things do have a learning curve of their own. Once you like really get to know them, you kind of you're off to the races, because you can make many different layouts happen that weren't possible with our grid system before.
Yeah. All right. Gonna go. Let's see here. Last two questions. Well, this one I'm just gonna answer really quick. Is in the live chat room. Leis, I think that's how you say your name. Different location for the navigator menu. We're already beta testing that to push it to the left side of the designer, and so that was really cool.
We're testing a ton of stuff there. In fact, little Easter egg, you can type in, actually, we'll see when we're ready for more for more alpha testers, but we are testing moving it to the left and giving some flexibility to move it back and forth, because we're getting mixed feedback around people being used to it being on the left, because other tools like Sketch, etc., have kind of the structure on the left. But then if you're used to it being on the right, you end up doing a lot of what we've lovingly called eye tennis, to jump back between the style panel and the navigator. So we're trying to figure that out, so that we either provide some flexibility or we are very comfortable around like that not being an issue for folks if we make it the default.
Okay, awesome. Okay, last one from Brian, asking, would be great to be able to include custom HTML or tables inside of CMS. I have a lot of enterprise level clients that require listing data sheets and datasheet data.
Yeah, I hear you. So that's what I mentioned about the rich text editor kind of infrastructure. It's almost to the point where we're ready to build new features on top of it. It's going to start small with things like subscript, superscript, and maybe being able to wrap some things with a whitelisted class, so you can like style more things in the CMS. But like showing data in tables is a very web-y type of thing. Like it's not always great for responsiveness. So sometimes you do like these table hacks with divs and stuff. But there are many times where you want a real table. Like a table is semantically correct in showing tabular data. So we have to figure that out at some point. I just don't know exactly when we get there. If it's going to start first with being able to add that on a static page, or if it's going to be kind of a first-class citizen in our rich text editor. I think that would still have to come after like much more kind of frequent requests, like nested lists and things like that in the rich text editor. But I do think it's again a question of when, not if. For now, we have to table that discussion.
Slow clap.
I know that's awesome. I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but it will make it to the CMS at some point.
Cool, cool. Wow, thank you for answering all those questions. Yeah. Again, these quarterly live Q and A's is really helpful for the community to just to get to see what we're working on. But yeah, next time this happens, yeah, end of next quarter, quarter two. I've already asked you what you're excited about, but anything in quarter two specifically that you're excited about?
Um, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot on there's a lot on the product. So we'll be making a lot of the improvements that we talked about, and there's some sort of behind the scenes projects. Um, I think the biggest thing I'm excited about is actually more at a meta level, like the fact that Webflow is growing into an organization that can scale with the type of product that we're creating, because
Yeah.
what we're creating is not something that is can be sustainably maintained by 50 people or even 100 people. Like the kinds of our ambitions are so large, we're going to have to like I mentioned, build a team around accessibility, build a team around progressive web apps, build a team around performance, build a team around like very specific CMS features, the plugin marketplace, the once the plugin marketplace is there to build more and more plugins. Like this is just in order to bring it to market faster. That's going to be a lot of concentrated effort across many different teams along the same strategy. So I think the thing I'm most excited about is building out the team in a way that we preserve like what's really special about Webflow, but also magnify the impact of what our company can do in the world to bring that impact faster.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to wait 4 years for user logins and another 10 years for like true web app creation in Webflow, or publishing to mobile platforms, etc. And to me, we just like took some of the early baby steps around kind of being able to scale our company to do that, like what Nelson mentioned around dedicated teams, etc. But the next 3 months are really going to be kind of playing out that story to a greater degree and helping us build that confidence that we'll be able to kind of replicate what's working and improve what's not working to make sure that we're building stuff much faster for all of you who are like eagerly waiting to have more tools at your fingertips to build for yourself or for your clients, or build a business, or launch a product, or completely start a new career, or whatever it is. So I think that for me is kind of the transition I've been on from trying to scale the product now that we have a really well working product that there's a sea of opportunity of like next things we can work on, to making sure that the company scales, because no matter how great the product is, it's never going to be better than the company. So a great company creates like an even better product, and now our company becomes a product in itself, because if our company is not operating well, or kind of operating in a sustainable way, then the product is going to start crumbling.
Yeah.
So we have to like focus on the fundamentals. So that's what I'm most excited about, is just like taking what the special thing we already have and bringing it, kind of leveling it up to much more impact, which is definitely kind of overwhelming and challenging, because it means more people and more products and more more initiatives and more names to remember. And at some point, we're going to get to the point where we don't remember all of each other's names
Yeah, it's
and all
getting
that.
harder.
That's kind of inevitable, but it's just so exciting, because it means that every day you see things that, if not every day, at least every week, we see things shipping to our customers. They're like, holy crap, I didn't even know we were working on this.
Yeah.
And boom, there you go. Like, a few things that we mentioned during this call. So that's what I'm personally most excited about. And just doing, more, convincing more people that Webflow is something that's worth investing into and can like really have a lasting impact, and overcoming a lot of these sort of like objections that people still have about what we're trying to do.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I'm most excited about. Of course, there's going to be a bunch of product initiatives and things we're going to ship,
Yeah.
um, but I really hope that we can keep the magic that is kind of like this team and what
Yeah.
we're able to create, and make it even more magical.
Yep. Yep. It's every new feature is a new opportunity to learn, and that magic of learning is, it's always awesome to see. So I mean, thanks to you and the team for making this magic happen. Yeah. Any last things you want to say to the community before we let you go?
Um, Yeah, as always, such a huge, heartfelt thank you to all of you for what you do. Everyone that's in this room, everyone that's going to be watching this later, whether you're just learning, or just finding out about Webflow, or you've been with us since, very early March or late March 2013, which many people, some that are in this chat have believed in us from way back then, when we seem like such a long shot. Just thank you so much for all the work that you do, for helping other people in the forum, for helping people. I've seen so many stories of, somebody saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, and doing a share link, and then somebody sets up a call, like a video call, and just walks them through it and helps them, become a better designer, or a better Webflow visual developer, or a better freelancer. And just that level of care and kind of mutual appreciation for the potential of what we can build here is just amazing to watch, and that inspires our entire team, and inspires me like every day to see how, what people are building with Webflow, like seeing products launch on Product Hunt that are built with Webflow. It's like, holy,
Yeah.
never in my wildest dreams imagine that. Because I used to take engineering teams. So just seeing what everyone is creating with Webflow, how many people are getting other people excited about it, like just showing off what's possible. But most importantly, like supporting each other, because it's tough doing this kind of work. It's
Yeah.
tough trying to figure out how to build an entire, like super modern, responsive website. It's not a walk in the park. Even with the tools that Webflow provides. So just seeing how this community has come together, especially in the last year, as we've had more and more meetups, more and more people like get together and help each other, and people are even like setting up Webflow themed, like co-working spaces where there's 3 or 4 Webflow developers working in one place. That's just really sort of like the kernels of, what I imagine to be like millions and millions of people in the community, if not like a year from now, maybe 2 years from now.
Yeah.
But all the fundamentals are there, and I think the thing that makes it possible is the people. So super thankful to everyone in the community, and again, we're here to listen. We're here to hear from you what you need for us to support you, to make sure that you're more successful in your business, you're more successful in your like personal pursuits, and if you're starting a startup or a new venture, like we want to know what would make it easier for you to do that without, potentially, needing to invest in learning how to code or whatever. And for us, it's that we're here to serve. And I know sometimes it might not feel that way, because we have to run a business, and like, of course we want to give everybody like free hosting and make Webflow available worldwide. And but just know that all that is done, in the interest of like making visual development a true reality over the next like many years, where it'll fundamentally shift how people create websites, and then applications, and like all kinds of software.
Yeah.
And for us to do that, we really have to focus on the most important things first, things that will, people are provide enough value that people are willing to pay for them, because that helps us finance, building more stuff in R&D, and then releasing it, and like that
Yeah.
cycle sort of repeats. So yeah, that's a really long-winded way to say thank you to everyone in the community.
Yeah.
Please keep doing what you're doing. You all inspire us.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we'll see you at the end of next quarter.
All
All
right.
right.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for hanging out.
Bye. All right. See ya. Right. And yeah. So, wow, a lot of information, a lot of good stuff. If I didn't get to your question, please post it on the forum.webflow.com, and I'll try my best to answer it. Or if Vlad has some time, maybe he'll go on the forum and answer some of any questions if possible. But yeah, thank you all so much. I will see you next time. I'm thinking streaming next week. I got to check the calendar, but let's just go through our outro. So if you need any account, billing, or technical help, please go to university.webflow.com/contact, and the support team will get back to you as soon as they can. If you want to join the community, please do so. Go to forum.webflow.com, ask your design or custom code question there. And do me a favor, if you get your question answered, pass that favor forward and answer someone else's question so we can all grow together. And one more thing about the community growing, let me go to my browser real quick. Yeah, so webflow.com/events. We have a new events page created by Johnny, one of our new designers in the team. Check out if there's an event near you. And if not, scroll all the way down and learn how to create your own meetup. And yeah, there's some benefits there. And there's a meetup guide that I wrote on how to start your own meetup. So yeah, webflow.com/events. And yeah, this stream happens every other Tuesday at 10 a.m. on Pacific time, youtube.com/webflow. Subscribe, notification bell. Social medias, twitter.com/webflow, instagram.com/webflow app, facebook.com/webflow. You can follow Vlad's Twitter account. It's really, really good. Lots of insightful things to think about and a Vlad joke here and there at Call Me Vlad. You can follow me at The Pixel Geek. I think that's about it. So thank you all so much for being here. And as always, make the web beautiful. See ya.